योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिमानतोऽस्मि। लये सम्बोधयेच्चित्तं विक्षिप्तं शमयेत् पुनः सकाशायं विजानीयात् समप्राप्तं न चालयेत्। Om. We spent quite a bit of time on the previous sutra because of its extreme importance, and also because it is so fundamental to yoga, and it is so fundamental to our in our pursuit of sukha. So parinama-tapa samskara dukkaihi gunavritti virodhacha dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha was the 15th sutra of the second chapter. So dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. So this, as I mentioned, this is a pretty pessimistic statement, but it is really not so. Because for a viveki, a person of discrimination, a person of intelligence, before actually undertaking any project, will very carefully think. So this is, many of you who are physicians, you already know how this happens. So what is this medicine? It is called Chikitsa Shastra. So in this discipline of medicine, Chikitsa Shastra, you don't suddenly jump and give some medication to your patient. So you look at the following. Number one, you will first of all see that the person is actually having a roga. So that means without having a roga, he will certainly not come to your office. So there is roga. And when he comes to your office, you know that he has come with a roga, and therefore you start looking for roga hetu. Roga hetu means what is the cause of this roga? And you will investigate that roga hetu. Then the goal of the physician is to give the patient back his arogya, his health or arogya, and then that is enabled by means of chikitsa or by means of giving him a treatment. So therefore, similarly, in Yoga Shastra also, before we start any project, we have got to look at these four ideas. The four ideas are that when I'm taking this project, I'm actually interacting with samsara, which has got many characteristics we have discussed number of times. So just like roga, samsara is also roga. It is called bhava roga. So this samsara roga, just like roga has got a reason, samsara has got a reason. It is called samsara hetu. And we want to be free from that so that we get back our health. And for that, there has to be a chikitsa or a method of treatment. And so we have got to have the upaya or the method of liberation, mokshopaya, and then followed by there must be actual realization of good health. And in Yoga Shastra, it is we must get moksha. Therefore, there are what is known as the chaturvyuha or the four-cornered approaches there. So we have identified that guna vritti virodha, all these things happen, therefore there is dukkha. And for a viveki, so what he thinks is, okay, now first of all, let me see what is it I should give up so that I don't get dukkha. You cannot give up the world, but you can give up those interactions and functions that cause dukkha. Because dukkha is always caused by our action. So a viveki will now, before he jumps into action, he thinks about the what should not be done or what should be given up. This is called heya or heyam, that which should be given up. So, what should be given up in the philosophy of Yoga Shastra? Let us go back to the very original statement of the first chapter. It is Purusha Prakriti union. Whenever the Purusha comes into contact with the Prakriti, the three gunas influence the Purusha, and the resultant of this combination is ajnana. So we draw, because we have talked about avidya as one of the kleshas. So how does avidya occur? Avidya occurs because of the union of Purusha and Prakriti. And so therefore Purusha Prakriti association is the cause. Therefore we call it as heya hetu. Just hetu means cause. Cause for rejecting, cause for avoiding a particular action. The cause is determined. So heya is there, heya hetu is there, and then how to make sure that this is completely destroyed or given up. The technical word used in Yoga Shastra is called hanam. So heyam, heyopaya, hanam, and then hanopaya. Hanopaya means how can we separate the influence of Prakriti upon Purusha. So this is the theoretical basis for our further contemplation. The further contemplation is where he says, heyam, dukkham, anagatam. So we have to consider all these four. We have got heya, that which has to be given up. We have got to consider heya hetu, that is the cause for this problem. And then we have got to look at hana, how to actually give it up. And fourthly, we have also to see hanopaya. And these four are established in the next four sutras. So if you look at the next sutra, heyam, the first of the four. Heyam dukkham anagatam. The dukkha that has not yet come, which is in future, has to be perceived today. Otherwise, we will be conducting ourselves instinctively. So a lot of times we misunderstand instinctive behavior as a virtue. I am a spontaneous person. But then a yogi does not talk about spontaneity in that context of saying, off the cuff I will do something. Because it is pancha bhavati, pancha na bhavati. Half the time you may succeed, half the time it can be a failure. So a very deliberate action is required for giving up the dukkha of the future. Heyam dukkham anagatam. Then look at the heya hetu. The next sutra says drashtu drashya samyogaha heya hetuhu. Drashtu is the seer. Drashya is the seen. The samyoga, the coming together of the seer and the seen, is the cause for dukkha. So we identified the reason for dukkha. Then from the reason for dukkha, next we have to see what exactly is the seen. And that is defined in the 18th sutra, prakasha, kriya, sthiti, shilam, bhuta indriyatmakam, bhoga apavargartham drishyam. What is seen? It is the world. What is the nature of the world? It has got three characteristics. It shows itself. It is revealed, so it is called prakasha. And it is also associated with action, kriya. And it is also there, stable. The world is there in spite of the changes. Still, the entirety of the world is there. It is called sthiti. So there is prakasha, revelation, there is kriya, action and activity, and sthiti, existence. This is the dharma or the characteristic of the seen drishyam. In simple words, it is sattva rajas tamo gunas. So that is the dharma or the characteristic of this scene. Then how is it enveloped? How does it manifest itself? In the way in which the five elements called bhuta, and the way in which it is our own sense organs, indriya. Bhuta, indriya, atmakam. Atmakam means in its form, bhutendriya atmakam. Why are these placed here? It is because of the moksha, which is called apavarga here, and bhoga, enjoyment, for the sake of enjoyment and liberation. Drishya, or the seen world, is designed by Ishvara. This we have got to think very carefully. Drishya is the world. What is the purpose of drishya? So that I can enjoy or liberate myself. Both possibilities are there. And for both of my enjoyment and liberation, there has to be a presentation of the world. How does it present itself? It presents itself as the Panchabhutas in the cosmos, and it presents itself as my Indriyas in the microcosm. And whether it is Indriya or whether it is the Panchabhutas, this Drishya has got three characteristics. It shows itself prakasha, it inspires action kriya, and then it is also there, established sthiti. So this is the drishya. So since we have got so many important concepts introduced in these three sutras, we'll go back and study it some depth. Heyam dukkham anagatam. So we are all having some dukkha or the other. Now let us ask, where exactly, when exactly is this dukkha, how to identify? This dukkha is past. Any dukkha that we have identified is in the past. Any dukkha. Or any dukkha is something I am undergoing or suffering now. So Patanjali Maharshi is not talking about my past dukkha. He is not giving any solution about my past dukkha. Whatever has happened in the past, Yoga Shastra has no solution. Whatever I am going through now, Yoga Shastra has no solution. Suppose I am having headache. I am having headache now, at this very moment. Then you give me a Tylenol. I take the Tylenol now. When will my headache go away? Is it not in the future? Even if it is 1 second? So there is no way that we can resolve the dukkha of the past. There is no way that we can resolve the dukkha that we are going through at this very moment. Hence, Patanjali Maharshi is not interested in discussing past dukkha or present dukkha. But there is something we can do for the future. So, Patanjali Maharshi is saying, Anagatam dukkham heyam. That dukkha which has not come in the future, now, as a discriminating person, as a viveki, do something now. This is very important in the
question there, Ashok, quick question there. How would we address someone who is grieving
correct.
on
So
something that happened?
I was
And do we say grief will stop in fast, or is this, I know there's no solution for what has already gone through grief?
that is a perfect question. I was about to address this question. What do you do for one who is grieving, one who is away? Let me take my own example. It has been about 8 months since Usha has passed away. So when was the moment that this dukkha occurred in the past? So the past dukkha has also become the present dukkha. I'm still grieving. What does it mean? I am grieving about a past dukkha because samsritya. You remember in the conclusion of the class last time I said, because we remember again and again and again. So you may recall that I quoted the last two verses of the Bhagavad Gita where Sanjaya says, Rajan samsmritya samsmritya. So what is it I am again and again remembering? A Viveki again and again and again remembers. Every time he is confronted with the dukkha of the past as a grieving person, will now understand the message of the next mantra, of the next sutra. What is the next sutra? All these experiences, the bhoga of the experiences is belonging to the drishyam, and its dharma is prakasha sthiti kriya and this dharma is related to only two things, bhuta and indriya. It has nothing to do with the purusha. So a person who has studied Yoga Shastra or a person who is receiving the Yoga Shastra, how does he deal with the grief of the past? First thing he does is, what does he remember? Samspritya, samspritya. When I constantly remember samspritya, samspritya of the glorious association I had with Usha for 50 years, it is bound to give me a happiness. And it's also saying that prakasha of my wife is not in front of me, but the memory is in front of me. Which memory I will samsmritya again and again I will think determines whether can deal with dukkha or not deal with dukkha. So if I continuously delve and continuously think of only the dukkha of that one moment in the life of Usha and I, that's one moment which we shared, the moment of our passing away, if I am samspritya of only that one moment, then this dukkha cannot be resolved. So look at Patanjali Maharshi's instruction to us. Past dukkha, I cannot give you a solution. Usha will not come back, whatever we do. And the dukkha of the separation, if I am experiencing at this moment, there is nothing you can do to counsel me. But what is it you can do to counsel me? Heyam dukkham anagatam. Learn to deal with this dukkha next moment, tomorrow, 10 years hence. But are we suggesting that one should forget the beloved one? Absolutely not. How we remember the beloved is what is the meaning of whether we are thinking of the future or not. How do we remember? So this is the specific question, specific answer. General question and general answer is to develop a skill of anticipating the problem that comes in future. Obviously, a story will help us understand. This is a story from the Jaina wisdom. There is a very beautiful Kannada text because you know Jaina's great contribution of the Jaina wisdom, of the philosophy of Jainas has been in Kannada, because a huge contingent of Jainas moved from in the Chandragupta Maurya's time, and they settled in Karnataka. And ever since, from about 3rd century BC, Jainism has a great presence in Karnataka, and the one of the oldest prose story text called Vadda Radhane. Vadda means Vriddha, Aradhane means worshipping the learned. There is a collection of stories. I am picking up one of the story from this text. In this text, we have a king, and the text talks about the king. His name was Atibala, and he was ruling Kaushambi of the Vatsa kingdom. If you go to Google and see where is the Vatsa kingdom, where is Kaushambi, you will be able to find it. And then this Vatsa kingdom was ruled by a king called Atibala, and he had a very clever, wise, beautiful queen, Manohari. And in their court, there was a very erudite and a very learned and a very capable minister. And his name was Soma Sharma, and he had a wife, Kashyapi. Now I want you to think of this scenario. Here, an extremely efficient minister is there. And obviously, the more and more skills you have, the more and more of value you are to your company, what happens? You will be dumped with more and more work. And how do they do that? They will come and praise you to the skies. You are the most important person, most valuable employee. In fact, they even create a cadre called most valuable employee. In fact, in Cisco, they have got of the super brilliant engineers, they have got a rank called MVE, most valuable engineer. Our son-in-law Murali is an MVE in Cisco. So what happens to him? 24 hours is not enough. Our Mantri, Soma Sharma, was like that. Then his wife, housewife, Kashyapi, she was reveling in the comforts provided by the king. They had 2 sons, Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti. Here we have an extremely busy father, enormous amount of wealth in the house, and a mother who is so doting and who would actually get the children whatever they want, whether it is clothing, whether it is a particular kind of food, but she did not have the ability to guide the children. So if the mother or the father, separately and together, take charge of the welfare of the children, no matter what is provided for the children, they are bound to be useless to society. Here we have Soma Sharma, very busy, and here we have Kashyapi, who has no control or influence on her 2 sons. So what happens? They want some money, take it. I want to have sleepover, go. I want this new clothing, take it. You can come at any time in the even in the night. On and on and on. So both Vayubhuti and Agnibhuti obviously fall into bad company. Because you remember early on we studied saying that Chitta Nadi Nama Vahati. This river called Chitta, it flows. How? In a gradient. Unless you build a dam. Father has no time to build the dam, and the mother has no skill to do that. And therefore, Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti fall into what is called Sapta Vyasanas, 7 habits. Stephen Covey came 1500 years after the author of Vaddaradhana talked about what are the 7 skills which are harmful. Sapta Vyasanas. Dyuta Mamsa Sura Veshya Keta Chaurya Paranganaha Mahapapani Saptaiva Vyasanani Tyajet Buddha. 7 defects are Dyuta, that is gambling. Mamsa, kill an animal mercilessly and eat its meat. Sura, drinking alcohol. Veshya, obvious. Keta means hunting. Chaurya, stealing and misappropriation. Paranganaha, going after others' wives. These are the Sapta Vyasanas. This Vayubhuti and Agnibhuti, Sapta Vyasanas. Now let's come back to our sutra. Heyam dukkham anagatam. If only Soma Sharma had allocated half an hour of his time for the children, or if only he had trained his wife, because a child will not happen suddenly. You get married and it takes at least a year to get a child. And during that year, what kind of a training this great, brilliant, learned minister give to his wife? Nothing. He only had her as a glorified servant in the house. That is all. So he did not give training to his wife if she did not have it. So what happened? Dukkham anagatam, they didn't work on it. So Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti turn out to be terrible fellows. And they are the children of the ministers. What can anybody do? You know very well. If somebody is the child of a very powerful person, even the police will not touch them. Isn't it? Law will not touch them. Unbridled conduct. But what does the drishyam, the world will do? Prakasha Kriya Sthiti, look at that next sutra. The world is a chakra, it keeps on moving. No event will remain as it is. One unfortunate day, that minister father Soma Sharma dies. When he died, whole thing is thrown into a disarray. The king Atibala had no idea of the training given or not given to his children. But the king was, Atibala had such great respect and such great admiration for Soma Sharma, he thought that his children also will be like that. Is that not what we do? This is exactly what we do. We see somebody and then we say, oh, this person is this family, son of this family, daughter of this family, so must be good. We go from that without examining. So Atibala Maharaja, what he does is Soma Sharma's children must be as eminent as his father, and we are getting two ministers because of two children. Let me appoint both of Soma Sharma's children as my ministers. King himself has chosen the two sons as ministers. With all the leadership qualities and be ruling a country, he did not see anagatam dukkham. What will happen if I take a rash decision? He simply appoints these two as ministers. Other courtiers and the members of the public cannot talk anything because these ministers are appointed by the king. How can you talk against them? If you do, Shiracheda is the solution. Heads will roll. So they become terrible tyrants. Revenue of the country started falling. Corruption started increasing. And it starts showing in the bottom line. So the king is seeing falling revenues, the king is seeing amassing of the enemy troops along the border. Then he's saying, what are my ministers doing? Then he calls other ministers and say, how are Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti? Now they are emboldened to report what kind of people these two are. Present dukkha. What can you do for the present dukkha? There was nothing that Atibala could do. He fires the two ministers, insulting them in the court terribly. Untrained. What is the attitude with which they have grown in the family? Everybody doting and everybody providing whatever Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti wanted. This is a new experience for them. This is a new experience of rejection. This is a new experience of condemnation. And they come home totally dejected. And where do you go to cry? They go to cry to the mother. By now, Kashyapi, the mother, has been observing their children, what is happening. Their conduct at death of her husband. Flashback of their conduct before the death of her husband. Analysis of their conduct during their ministership. She had time to contemplate. Obviously, with her confidence, she was also asking why I am so disappointed. My husband was such an eminent person. My children have turned out like this. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Then, when they come to the mother and say, we have been so terribly insulted, we cannot stay in this place anymore. By now, probably Kashyapi had read this sutra, Ayam Dukkham Anagatam. Then she says, I have to do something about the future of my children. So she says, I have a brother, and this brother is extraordinarily intelligent, and he is the minister in the Magadha kingdom, and his name is Surya Mitra. I'm going to give you a letter, and Surya Mitra will be an excellent teacher for you to bring you out of this depth of misery. Take this to your uncle. So she writes a letter and gives it to Agrimitra and Vayabhiti, and then both of them go to their uncle. The letter was sealed, and in that letter addressed to Suryamitra, the sister had poured out her heart. And she said, there is nothing I can do to correct the situation. I am seeking your help. So now, suppose you were that uncle and you open that letter, what would you do? Here your two nephews have come. The two nephews, no matter who they are my sister's children. There is this enormous love for them. What would I do? I would bring them into my house. I am also a minister, wealthy, of a very powerful Magadha kingdom. All the luxuries that was provided for them in Kaushambi, I would have given them in my home also. Isn't it? Suppose your nephew comes to your house, joins OSU, and you offer to your sister, brother, your child can stay in our house. And you give the child a car, you cook for the child. Are you doing a favor or are you harming? Something to be thought about. See, when we apply this to our own lives, Yoga Sutra stands out in its brilliance. He has come, my nephew has come to my home for study. And therefore, all the discipline of a student has got to be imposed upon that student, even though he is my own blood. If I don't do that, I will not be able to avoid anagatam dukkham. What is the anagatam dukkham? Your sister, brother will come and say, I trusted you that you will be a good resource for my son's growth. See how he has turned out. Useless. And all that you have done so far is like doing a homa in water, as they say. If you throw havis in water, what happens? It won't be received. There is no agni in the water. This Viveki, Suryamitra knew this. Suryamitra opened this letter and it was addressed to Suryamitra on top, and he tells these two boys, yes, I am Suryamitra, but I have no sister. I don't know who you are talking about. I am not your uncle, because I even don't know who this lady called Kashyapi is. And you are saying you are her sons. I do not know what gave you the idea that I am her brother. Sir, my mother told us. Your mother might have said, but it is not a fact. We don't know what Suryamitra she was referring to. Which Suryamitra she was referring to. And therefore, anyway, you have come here for learning. And if you have come here for learning, I will take you as my students. But all the discipline of being a student, you have to observe. Agnibhuti and Vayubhuti were made to sleep on the floor in the stables. They were given just gruel. That's what the food they had. And Suryamitra's servants would come and whip them up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And Suryamitra teaches the 18 Shastras for them. At the end of 5-6 years, both of them become extraordinarily learned. Graduation time. At graduation time, Suryamitra says, yes, I am your uncle. If I had told you that I am your uncle on that day, then you would certainly have not turned out to be what you are today. So now you see Heyam Dukkham Anagatam in action. The future dukkha of the possibility of Agnimitra and Vayubhuti continuing their lifestyle is arrested. And Agnimitra and Suryamitra did not talk anything about their present state, how they were, nor he talked about how they wasted their childhood, nor he talked about the indifference of the father, nor he talked about the incompetence of the mother. Answer to your question, Hari. What is the use of analyzing the past dukkha?
I was only, the way you had originally expressed it, it looked like we cannot address a grief in the past. But we still can address it as a continuation of the grief into the future can still be addressed.
Yeah. So this
Right.
the way in which we will console is there is a period of mourning, there is a period when a person should grieve, should be allowed to grieve. So that is not a period when we go and tell them don't grieve. But if the grief is unresolved for days and months together, then as a friend, as a well-wisher, what we should do? We should pull them out of that, isn't it? And without taking away the emotional aspect of the situation. We have to show them that there is a future. We have to show them that there is Ishvara is expecting. Why has Ishvara kept me alive? If it was my being with Usha was in the design of Ishvara something that is inseparable for Loka Kalyana's purpose, then at that very moment I should have also died, isn't it? So what is the purpose of Ishvara keeping me alive? There is a higher purpose. And it was not in the design of Ishvara that I should keep sitting and weeping all the time. Ayam dukkam anagatam. Again, it does not in the least reduce the tragedy that has happened. It does not. But can we stay there all the time? But then the next sutra actually establishes why we should not remain in that state all the time. Why should we not stay? Because there is a certain amount of comfort in wallowing in dukkha, isn't it? Look at psychology there. If I keep weeping, if I keep crying, not that I'm wanting somebody to come and console me, not that I'm asking somebody to be to show that they are really grieving with me, which they are. But the thing is, what am I doing? I have not understood the nature of the world. What is the nature of the world? Every samyoga is going to be end in viyoga only. For some it happens early, for some it takes some time. But it is inevitable. So for which that is inevitable, a prajna, a person of wisdom, na shochayet. He does not say you don't feel sad. What he is saying is don't be in the mire of dukkha, so that whatever resources Ishvara has given you is not available to the world. Why did we come into the world? So that we can contribute, isn't it? And we are denying Ishvara's design for us. And you will see that instruction coming, drishya, drishta, drishya samyogaha heya hetuhu. What is the reason for dukkha? Sarvameva dukkham vivekinaha. What is the reason for dukkha? The coming together of the drashta. The drashta is Purusha, and the drishya, the scene, where do we see? We see it from our intellect. In fact, Yoga Shastra says drishya is buddhi sattva, the essence of buddhi. And when these two come together, there is dukkha. In other words, if we have to give up dukkha, we have to know the reason for dukkha, the karana for dukkha, and the origin for dukkha. Unless we recognize the reason for dukkha, the karana for dukkha, you will never be able to find a parihara. In fact, a lot of times there is a denial. They don't want to find parihara. Kashyapi could have done that. Kashyapi could have said, okay, my dear children, Agnibhuti, Vayubhuti, yes, father is dead, sure, but he has made enough wealth. There is enough wealth for you to continue your saptavyasanas, and then we will not exhaust all the wealth in our lifetime. So I am going to fund your saptavyasanas. I don't want you to go out of my sight. Is that not what all parents want? I want my children to be near me physically. Cannot let go. But she knew, heyam dukkham anagatam. Every day that my children stay with me, it will add to dukkha of the future. So me, the Purusha, Kashyapi, the drishya, the scene, my children should be separated. So she sends her children to her brother, because she realized the karana, the cause for the dukkha. So who is this drashta? This drashta is pure intelligence, chidrupa. And it is in this chidrupa, in this consciousness, that the shabda, etc., of the outside world appear. They actually manifest in that. When the world manifests in the consciousness of the drashta, unfortunately what happens? Dukkha arises. Now here again, let's think about this for a moment. The Purusha is unattached to everything, isn't it? So is it possible for a Purusha to experience dukkha at all? Since nothing sticks to Purusha because he is asangaha, so Purusha has got no dukkha intrinsically. So where is the locus of dukkha? The locus of dukkha is in drishya, in the scene. But the drishya prapancha, the seen world, is causing dukkha for the chidrupa Purusha. Why? Because the world is inert. For a Jada Vastu, there cannot be any dukkha, isn't it? Only for a Chaitanya Vastu, there can be dukkha. And the Chaitanya Vastu is Purusha. Nature of Purusha is Asanga Rupa. But why is it this Purusha is having dukkha? It is because of the ignorance, that is the avidya, that is screening the buddhi. This ignorance, how did it cause? The potentiality of the dukkha in the vishayas, in the various worldly things, is like a magnet. And the buddhi is like an iron piece. When the proximity of the world comes close to the buddhi, then the dukkha of the world is transferred to the buddhi iron. And therefore, what should we do? What we should do is we must distance the buddhi from the world. And that distancing is what is being suggested here. But then this buddhi, even though it appears to be independent, but actually it is serving what? Is the buddhi serving the Purusha, or is the buddhi serving the world? Transactions from the world, please think. If the buddhi serves the transactions of the world, dukkha is inevitable. If the buddhi serves Purusha, then what happens? The influence of the world will not affect the buddhi. That's where yoga comes. This raises an interesting question. This association of drik, the seer, and the drishya, the seen, is this natural or incidental? We have to think about this. It has to be, if it is considered as a nature, if the samyoga is considered as a natural, then the buddhi association with the world can never be removed, isn't it? Because what is natural can never be changed. And therefore it must be incidental. That means when the world comes into contact with the buddhi, buddhi gets modified. But what is the nature of the buddhi? Swabhavika nature of the buddhi. Swabhavika nature of the buddhi is pure subserving Purusha only. But this gives rise to another corollary question. Then why is it this buddhi gets corrupted? This is where we talked about klesha karma samskara. And this klesha karma samskara, from where has it come? It has come from the antahkarana, from the emotional mind. And the ahankara, the asmita, ragadvesha, abhinivesha. So because of these things, the buddhi appears to be suffering from dukkha. So what is the solution for this? Solution is the drik, drishya, that is the seen and the seer, samyoga coming together is not natural, it is incidental. Before meeting our spouse, who was she? Was she, before meeting your spouse, he or she? Who was that person? Did you have any idea? Was it associated with any form, rupa or nama? No, isn't it? Let us say 5 years before you met your spouse. Could you connect any nama rupa to that? There was no connection. At that point of time, where was Raga Dvesha about the spouse? So the Raga Dvesha suddenly appeared for the source when that transformation of the status from into Grihastha ashrama happened, and from then on what happens, all the ups and downs of life start causing the kleshas. They're all naimittika, they're all purely incidental, isn't it? And therefore vrittis also are arising. And hence the removal of dukkha karana can be done. Let's take an example. The nature of the sole of our foot is that it is tender. And when we have to walk out, what do? We wear footwear. There is nothing you can do about the tenderness of the foot. There is nothing you can do about the thorns and that is lying in the yard. Nothing you can do about it. They remain as they are, isn't it? But what is the defense I can build? I can wear a footwear. So when I wear a footwear, the swabhava of the thorn, which is to prick, the swabhava of my tender soul, which is to suffer pain when a thorn enters into my soul. What is the parihara? The parihara is twofold. Don't walk barefoot. That means don't get out of your house at all, is one. Or you wear footwear. These are the two alternatives we have. So samskara, samsara, dukkha overcoming is also similar. The rajas tamas gunas are always there. And as we increase our sattva guna, with the increasing sattva guna, what happens? An amount of comfort is experienced by the Purusha, and the increasing sattva guna obviously reduces rajoguna and tamoguna. So increasing of the sattva guna is the footwear you are going to wear, so that the outside thorns of the drishya does not bother us in future. Because the past, when we have walked barefoot, the thorns have hurt us. But now, in future, I am going to wear footwear. This leads to the next sutra, Prakasha Kriya Sthiti Bhutendriyartham Bhoga Apavargartham Drishyam. So we talked about the combination of sattva, rajas, tamo gunas. So what is the nature of sattva? Sattva's nature is revelation or prakasha shila. Its nature is to reveal things as they are. That's why I said we have to increase our sattva guna. Sattva guna, please don't misunderstand, it is not morality. It's not ethics. Sattva guna is where we observe things as they are, not as we want it to be, or not as they present themselves to be. See, both are ajnana only. Actually, as it is. When we see the next door neighborhood kid is misbehaving, how do we look at it? When our own child is misbehaving, how do we look at it? A person who is Sattva-guna Pradhana looks at both with the same eye. And therefore, we also have to understand the nature of the combination of these gunas. First rule, we have already talked about it several times. The gunas cannot exist independently. Even if I say that I am in pursuit of Sattva-guna Pradhana style of life, there is Rajoguna and there is Tamoguna. When I am hungry, when I eat, there is Rajoguna. When I feel sleepy and I take nap, it is Tamoguna. It's inevitable, indispensable. A Parama Tamoguni, Rakshasa also, he sees things. That he can see a form is Sattva-guna. Ravana seeing Sita and her beauty is Sattva-guna. Ravana wanting to possess her is Rajastamo gunas. That's the clarity we have to get. So all the three gunas are present in everybody. One becomes prominent and the other two subserve. And then what happens is they come together to form a particular way of presentation, but each one of them will not give up their guna. So please think about this carefully. Sattva, Rajastama gunas are together. We increase or decrease one of the gunas and we strike the perfect balance. Accurate percentage, proportion of Sattva guna, accurate proportion of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. We balance them. Even if you balance them, each one of them will continue to have their gunas and it manifests also. How we can understand this by again using an everyday experience. Let us say you make rasam. When you are making rasam, the basic ingredients are salt, the tamarind, and the spice, isn't it? These three are the fundamental combinations to make rasam. But then they get perfectly mixed and you get the most tasty rasam. But in that rasam, don't you distinctly taste the salt, the sourness, and the spice? You distinctly taste all the three, even though they are in perfect combination. So Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas can be in perfect combination, but it's their own intrinsic nature, they will not give up. Second rule in this sutra is it always keeps changing. The rasam you make today will not be the same tomorrow. You can never repeat absolutely the same taste, even though you use the same measure. Let us say you are using the same spoon. A few grains less or a few grains more, you cannot notice. That changes the taste of the rasam. So therefore, Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas can never be avoided, but can be managed. So what is the purpose of this Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas? Prakasha, Kriya, Sthiti, Sheelam. Its purpose is for the sake of enjoyment of the individual, if he chooses to enjoy the world, or for getting moksha, if he chooses moksha. The tool is available for both purposes. That is why the Upanishad said, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoho. Amrita Bindu Upanishad says, Mana eva manushyanam. This buddhi is the cause for both bondage as well as for liberation. How do we get entangled in the world? Bandhaya vishayasaktam. When we get totally absorbed in the vishayasakti, the sapta vyasanas that I was talking about, when we get involved in that muktam nirvishayam smritam, who is one who is liberated, one who can keep the influence of the world at bay. Such a person can get liberated. And when he does that, the person will have no dukkha in future. Heyam dukkam anagatam prakashakriya sthitishīlam bhutendriyatmakam bhogapavargartham drishyam. So these are again, a beautiful expansion of the idea as to why there is dukkha and what we should do to overcome the dukkha. More we'll see in our next class. Thank you.